we may be looking at a pathway to some sort of a science we can hardly begin to imagine now.
I
I
hope
mean,
so.
Jung ended his book on flying saucers in he had a chapter at the end called UFOs Considered in a Non-Psychological Light. And he found he felt himself on the horns of a dilemma that UFOs have been photographed, although I think it's not, the evidence is nowhere near as strong as he thinks, as witness John and May, and that they've been detected on radar, although there are such things as anomalous propagation of creating blips where something isn't really there. And I think the ufologists have tended to ignore those cases where the radar shows something and there's no visual sightings. But anyway, to Jung, this was a real problem. And he said that our alternatives are either that the presence of real objects in our skies, by which I suppose he meant extraterrestrial visitors, are the source, provide material for psychic projections, or else that psychic creations can appear on radar. And he wasn't very happy with
well, let me
either
recommend
one.
you think about we have 5 ordinary senses that are designed for humans to survive and hunt and get shelter and procreate. They certainly don't define, I mean, we see 1/1,000,000th of the electromagnetic wavelength. You know, scientists have a strong belief in dark matter and dark energy that they can't measure or pick up or anything else. So the idea that a different civilization from a different plane, that it would show up in a way that was responsive to our senses seems highly unlikely. So a foreign life form would probably not be detectable by the means we have available. It's probably more likely an energy field of some sort, and we just can't measure those things. So the lack of physical evidence doesn't make me believe it does exist, but it also doesn't do a lot to discredit.
To dissuade you, yeah.
And the fact that some people will pick up the energy fields that others don't. You know, if you mentioned Qigong, you know, if you're talking about, there are many healing mechanisms. Look at acupuncture. Nobody questions acupuncture as working anymore, but
That is true.
Western scientists deny that it's based on meridians, right? You know, there's an awful lot that scientists can't show with a camera or a meter. But
meridians, for instance, an autopsy will not show meridians.
Absolutely. And let me give you an example.
Their energy.
Precognition, you know, people talk about picking up things that happen in the future. Well, now that they have functional MRIs, you know, and other mechanisms to study the brain, they're seeing that the next picture you see among some people, they're reacting to it before it's shown to them, but it's by such a small amount, they're not consciously aware of it. You know, so as our tools increase, I think the science shows anomalies. And where there's an anomaly, one can only conjecture as to what the explanation might be, but you can't rule out that it's different than our normal scientific explanation of our reality.
And I want to add, isn't that where spirituality and science merge, or might sometime, in a way that people could come together over? Yeah.
Merge or overlap, who knows? But if you're talking true spirituality as opposed to organized religion, yes.
Yeah. And then also the mandala itself, going back to your opening, the embrace of paradox that implies, that everything you said, that these things are not mutually exclusive. They can be held at the same time as realities. Whether this is an external or a manifestation of an internal state or a vision of an internal state, the two are not mutually exclusive. They can exist and be held in the same space. That an internal state can potentially manifest on a sub physical level, physical meaning the general bandwidth that most people can see, but on a level, on a phenomenological level, where there is an energy, but it's outside that bandwidth for most people, only the most sensitive, so that it does exist as an external reality for those few.
So that you would see the UFO not as extraterrestrial visitors, the way the conventional approach is, nor as psychological projections or solely psychological projections.
Nor as solely psychological.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
So, David,
there's
I know
a potential.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying potentially. All of this is in a very sort of amorphous liquid state with the potential to move more to one aspect of these potentials than the other, but possibly fractions of coexisting aspects of all of these truths, fractionally.
So, David, one of the things I was going to say is one of the big issues with what you showed us was that people shared an experience, and one of the things special was that was shared. And you've mentioned shamanism, and I have read some of the things you've written, which are wonderful, by the way. Kudos for your, particularly on mysticism and Kabbalah.
Thank you.
But if you study shamanistic practices, it is not uncommon for shamans together, or a shaman and a person they're working with, to share the same journey simultaneously, to take a journey together. And when they do that, they see exactly the same things and they experience the same things. And that's not unusual. In fact, it's a common practice among some tribes. So the idea of people sharing something that other people wouldn't see objectively, even if they're in the same room, is not exactly unheard of.
So that would be a model for explaining why out of 38 people on the Friday night, 25 saw and 13 didn't.
It can certainly explain that different people can share the same experience while others around them don't see it.
Yeah,
exactly.